have Ronish Kumar, who's an AUT marketing student, Fiona Cresswell from Fiona Parkville Healthcare, how are you? And Sophie Stanley from Bouncer. Hi, Sophie. Hi. And the stage is yours.
Tēnā koutou, ko Helen Shorthouse, no Otatahi aho. So we've got a few Otatahi people here today. I know we stand between you and lunch, right? But you all had something for morning tea, so you're not going to die. And while the rest of the morning has been about the companies that you work with and for, this session is actually about you. This is about growing great tech marketers. And so for some of you, that will be about how you grow yourself. For some of you, it will be about how you grow your team. Some of you, it will be about an aspiration of where you want to be. So we've got an amazing team here, and they are going to don their little hats, which I have to say my creative manager, Fee, here has created. So big cheers to... So, and I will nod to Caro, because in previous years, she's been very good at helping people to identify who is on the stage, because frankly, we'll introduce you to names and you might forget. So Fee's here, and she is the big beast of Fisher and Paykel. They do awesome stuff, but you know, when you've got hundreds and hundreds of people in your team, it's sometimes quite hard to manoeuvre and make change happen. We have got Sophie here, who has got... I think that's quite a nice little motorboat. Usually they'll wear these at lunchtime, I'm sure, so you can see them. And she has worked for a number of tech marketing company, or a number of tech companies in marketing. And she is now leading Bouncer, which is a micro mentoring organisation. So we're going to hear a bit more about that. And then we've got the wonderful Ronish here, who is actually a student here at AUT. And he is here to represent the voice of people who are looking to come into roles. He's actually doing a master's, so has actually already been into the workplace, had some interesting experiences, and is going to bring some of those back to us today. And he also is the head of the marketing group that's here at AUT and teaches as well. So he is quite a shining star coming through. So big round of applause for our team. I'm going to lead them by asking some questions. We're trying to cover everything about leadership, right? So that's such a massive topic that you could spend all day here at least. So we're only going to touch a couple of different themes. But we'll also open up for Q&A. So if you've got questions, please kind of keep those, and I will open up when we've got through a little bit. We had quite a good conversation beforehand about what we thought was important, and we identified kind of 5 key things, and we may not get a chance to go through all of these, but the key areas that the 4 of us identified was actually number 1 was knowing whether you want to be a leader or not. And some of that's actually about if I'm striving to be a leader in an organisation, why? Having a good support team. Humility, you don't need to know all the answers. Building your team culture and developing leadership skills. So I'm going to run through some of those with these guys. But if we don't get a chance to answer all of them, we'll be around at lunchtime. So first of all, this is about having a good support team, because we thought this was a good place to start. Being a leader can be lonely. Who here has got a leadership role of people within their organisation? Yeah, it can sometimes be quite lonely. You're supposed to know what you're talking about, not always admit that you actually don't really know what you're talking about sometimes. So what should you do to find support, and who should be in your team? So Ronish, you've had some interesting experience in the past about things that have worked well and that haven't. So maybe you can just explain that a bit.
Sure. So with leadership, obviously, as a graduate or a student, if you are given that role, it's a lot to take in, especially in terms of whether you get respect from people within the organization as well. Leadership can be lonely, as Helen mentioned. It's very difficult because you have to juggle between your team, your managers, and also your customers. So when you're juggling in between all of those, the main question is, how do I get support? Because you need both moral support and also additional training in terms of how to be a good leader, how you can actually liaise with your team. Some people do say that a team defines how your success, but what I personally believe is a good team is based off support from the management team and how the management actually guides the leader in terms of leading their own team. I had experience. I used to work at AA Insurance, and I was given a role of a leader. This was during the holiday seasons, so it was very difficult for me because I had no support. Everyone was on holiday. It was very difficult to actually lead the team, deal with customers. If I do look back on that journey, I personally believe that as the management staff, new grads and students, we would prefer just more support, have someone on the shift we can talk to, speak to, someone who's able to support you in terms of doing your duties. Yeah.
Thank you. And so this is your hot area.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk to us about what we can do within an organisation or finding a broader support team.
Yeah, I think certainly from my perspective, I've worked in a lot of fast-growing startups, and one of the things we've certainly noticed is when you're in those fast-growing organisations, things are moving totally super fast, and everyone's busy, and you don't invest time in yourself. And you're going so fast that you can't sort of keep up with things. And often you might be a generalist and you might be a one-man band, you're doing everything, you've got 4 different hats on. And, as that person, you need to have support around you. And I think particularly with the new generation, the Gen Zs coming into the workforce, we need to be able to support these people. And I think it doesn't just look like one sort of long-term mentorship sort of opportunity. It can be, sometimes you need a hype person. You need someone who is going to give you that confidence to hype you up, just to give you the confidence that you're doing a good job. Or sometimes you need a guru, like maybe you are going into a new account-based marketing program and you actually need to talk to someone who's done it before and you want to hear their war stories of how it's done. And, maybe you just need a buddy who's in the trenches, maybe another marketer who's working in a different organisation and seeing how they're doing things differently. And that's why we really believe in the power of micro-mentoring, because it's, sometimes you need to build your own personal board, like your own personal support team. And that doesn't mean one person for everything. It means, somebody who can sort of help you in different facets of, the working environment you are, whether it's you need that sort of confidence boost or whether you need that guru who's going to really sort of coach you through things. So, and we sort of believe that, particularly as the new generation come through, that, the new generation want to learn, work and grow completely differently than we have in the past. We think that, courses and stuff, like good courses and things like this are great, but sometimes it's that in the moment, you've got this challenge right now, like Ronish said, he was in the holiday period and he needed to talk to someone. How are you going to solve that without sort of bouncing with people and talking off other people? So a lot of power in building that support team around you, and we really believe in that. Yeah,
cool. Fee, did you want to add anything to that? No, that's
I probably the only thing I would add is the concept that Sophie said there is actually whether you're a leader or an actual individual contributor, you should build that network around you. Yeah.
So who, and this is including everybody, so not just those that are leaders, who thinks that they've got a good team around them already in their own board? Put your hands up if you don't think that you've got that yet. So maybe one of the things for all of you, whether you've got a good team, just review who you've got in your team. And for those of you that don't, just have a wee think about what you could do to actually build that for yourself. Because I think that's a good takeout from here. So I'm standing up because I'm hiding behind the lectern there.
That group of people, that support network that you're building, they don't necessarily need to know there's this formal arrangement of that they're there as your mentor. Like we talked about how I personally have mentors who don't actually know they're my mentor, but I observe them and I see what they do that I don't like that they do, and I learn from that. But I see amazing things that they do, and I think that's how I want to be as well. So just bear that in mind too.
And I think we've heard a lot lately over the past while, the ChatGPT is coming, you can go to ChatGPT and answer all your questions. But sometimes actually what you need is a bit of empathy. Actually, sometimes, this technology is great, we can use it. But sometimes, what you might need from informal or formal mentorship or anything like that is actually just someone to listen to you and feel heard, and not be a computer hearing you,
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally true. So one of the conversations we had as a group was this whole concept of humility. So as a leader or even an individual kind of person within, you're the marketing person, you're kind of supposed to know what you're talking about, but you don't always. So we called this one humility. Fee, I'd like you to talk about what you've seen done well and also not done well.
Okay. So I think, this idea of being humble, I think is really important as a leader, but actually just, again, as an individual contributor. When you've got humility, I think it leaves you open to learn and to continuously improve. So it's a really important attribute to have. How it's been done really well, I actually look to our CEO as an example. So one thing, he's an extremely humble guy. One thing I remember having a conversation with him about is, that it was a presentation, and I think I was up with another guy, and I kind of fumbled and dropped something, and everyone kind of, it was a scenario where, we'd lost something, and it just kind of, at the time, I'm like, oh my God, there's 100 people in the room, but it broke, everyone kind of laughed, and it kind of broke this, just this kind of stressful and anxious situation that people can have around someone else is probably going to get up and present after me. And personally, would you guys rather get up and present after a fabulous, perfect presentation that's been immaculately executed, and then you walk up and trip up the stairs, right? So in some ways, you want to, being humble and just being vulnerable is a good thing. And he talks about this kind of, not like being imperfect. We don't want perfection. Imperfection's okay, because he doesn't want people investing, hundreds of hours and presenting something, practicing it 100 times. I mean, what kind of investment was that when actually the value and return? So, and then the other thing I will say around humility is this idea of, leaving yourself open for improvement and feedback and input. And it's like this concept of, if someone hands you a document and said, here's my final, it's my final piece, can you just review it, please? It's final, so I now don't feel, oh, geez, there's this major grammatical error right there, and I really want to change it, but it's final. And so I think having a predetermined outcome or decision before going into, any interaction or conversation or, ideation, don't predetermine things. And that's just being humble that others might be able to bring other things to the table.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It's also quite crushing if you give somebody something and you say, this is my final. Sophie, would you like to also what you've seen done well and also any learnings?
I think I just add to what Fee said. I think there's so much power in saying, I don't know the answer to that, and I'm going to find out. I think staying curious is like one of the most powerful things we can do as leaders and marketers, and particularly in marketing, because I think a lot of marketing is a little bit experimental as well. We're trying new things where we have hypotheses and we actually don't know the answers of how things are going to go. There's frameworks and all those sort of things out there. But, having the power to say, look, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm curious enough that I'm going to find the answer and I'm going to find a way through this is really powerful. So I think the more you can do that, and I think sometimes the people who do that more often are probably more successful in the long run than people say, I know everything. I like to use this phrase, it's better to be a learn-it-all than a know-it-all.
Love it.
Nice one. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was culture. And again, this could take up days and days and days, but building a good team culture. And some of that is about how you build your culture as an organisation, but some of it's also about how you build the culture of your team or just yourself. And so we were just going to talk through what we have again seen done well and not so much. So Fee, can I get you to kick that one off again?
So having been at Fisher & Paykel Healthcare for like 22 years, I have seen an enormous growth. When I started there, we had one building, we had a few hundred people, there was just a few hiring managers. And it was, beautiful culture. We're here doing very altruistic things, saving people's lives through respiratory devices and stuff, and we're all doing good. And then over, 10, 15 years later, you can see now we're 4 buildings, and there's 3,000 people on site, you know, we're over 4,000 people on site now, and you do get this kind of, wow, how, you know, we've got tyranny of distance across buildings, but also obviously global offices around the world. So I remember feeling the culture's changing, because when you were in that one building, it was really easy to keep it, you know, everyone could see it, how we do things around here. But I guess what we did to ensure that we didn't lose that, as you get bigger, you have to be more intentional about your culture. So for us, I think defining it, and then articulating it, sharing that, and then living it. And I think we've got some really beautiful examples of that, living that culture. You know, for us, the other thing too is the articulation of it. I mean, we've, in different functions of the business, articulated these things called fundamentals, and they're things that we hold workshops and stuff to bring people on. When you're new, in induction, you get inducted into, hey, this is just helps you understand the way we think and the way we make decisions and why we make decisions and stuff. And a lovely example of kind of living it, one of the things we have in our fundamentals is around doing what's best for the patient. And during COVID, there was this real calling for us of COVID as it results in respiratory distress. We create respiratory devices. And so there was this enormous demand, and we couldn't meet that demand around the world. So we were pulling all stops to try to make all these devices. And obviously, often demand and supply, what's the natural thing you do? You put your prices up. Well, for us, that wasn't the right thing to do at all. And so we didn't put our prices up, but we were freighting things by air freight, which was costing us more. We were having to employ more people. We hired like over 1,000 more people during those COVID times. This was all like more investment. And so, yes, that affected our margins at the moment. So we're down on margin, but longer term, we know we'll come back there. But I think that's, you know, you've got to live that culture.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Ballooning by 1,000 people in a short space of time.
Yeah.
Sophie, can you talk to us a bit about, you've had experience of building teams from kind of small to scaling up. So can you just talk about that?
Yeah, I think like when you, at some of my past roles, I started as the first employee growing that company up to the sort of 50 people stage. And I think one of the things about culture, I think Fee mentioned this as well, when you're all in the same room and, you know, you can see everyone, you can talk to everyone sort of one-to-one, it's very easy to keep that culture sort of flowing. But as soon as you're growing plus 20, 30 people, it's very quick for that to change very quickly. So, you know, one of the things I think is very core is, particularly in startups, is actually being really clear on your values, because you know, startup culture is very fast-paced, moving, uncertain. Things are changing all the time, and if we want to attract the best and the brightest, like people like Ronish, then, you know, we want to be really clear about our values as an organisation. So there's the right fit for the people coming into the organisation. They know what they're sort of coming into. Some people like a little bit more structure and, you know, things like that, and they might choose a different type of organisation to go into. So if you get those values right, and people are joining a company that they really believe in the values drives behaviour, like you said, and decisions you make within the business, and those values are going to then drive the culture forward. And and it comes from the top as well. Like you have to see those values exhibited from leadership right down through the organisation for it to sort of make an impact. Yeah.
Have you ever seen it done badly and then had to deal with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's very quick. Like if you don't do that value setting up front, then you know, people don't really know what the values of the organisation are, and then chaos can ensue. Yeah. So I think actually resetting that, and sometimes as the organisation grows, you actually need to go back to the drawing board and go, are these still our values of our organisation, and how is that the culture we want for our organisation going forward?
Yeah. Who here is what you call a Gen Z? Excellent. Welcome. I'm now going to ask Ronish to just give us a little bit of a perspective, because there was like 98% of the people in this room did not put their hands up. The people that put their hands up are coming our way. They are in the workforce. If they're not working for you now, they will be. At some point, they will be your boss. They will be your suppliers. They will be your customers. So it is, and frankly, most of us are pretty clueless about what your generation needs and wants and how it's different, because there's people all the way along the workforce with different generations. So Ronish, from a culture perspective, maybe talk to us. Tell us what you want.
Sure. So I've spoken with a lot of new grads and a lot of students in the workforce, and essentially what they want is workplace flexibility and just support. Nowadays, most people do prefer maybe working from the office once or twice a week and then the rest from home. Just having a management team who is understanding that, yes, you're someone who is new in the workforce and you may not know everything, but you're still trying your best. Essentially, Gen Zs, we just want support and flexibility. Essentially, that's what we require.
Is there anything you don't want?
Good question. Possibly no. I mean, there's a lot of things that people don't like, but it varies different on person to person. So I can't really comment on what
Cool.
that would be.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to pause there for a minute. Is there any questions from the audience? Oh, hand's gone up straight away, right at the back. Run, Meng.
You'd like to work in the office one day a week. How do you feel like that's, or do you feel like that's quite like limiting for you actually seeing the mentors like in real life and kind of learning behaviours when you're on the start of your, I guess, growth journey as an employee?
Yep, I definitely agree with what you said. So with my previous workplace, we did have the flexibility to work from home and office. I personally preferred working from office because I like the interaction, so I can speak with my mentors and with the teams. I can actually get to know them. Because during the lockdown, I was working from home, and when I was given the leadership role, none of the staff knew me. So when I went into the office, they were like, "Who is this person? What are they doing here?" Essentially. So I do believe that maybe 3 or 4 days would be ideal just to work from office and the rest from home. But most Gen Zs actually prefer more days from home. But with my personal perspective, I would say at least 3-4 days from the office is better, just because you can liaise with the team. A lot of hands.
Hi, this is for Ronish, but also Sophie, I think. I'm curious about like Gen Z wanting support, and all of us want support, I guess. But Sophie's offering basically a build your own mentorship kind of program, a micro mentoring program. Is that sufficient? Would you like to build your own, or do you want the person you work for to actually provide mentorship?
As Gen Zs, we would prefer the employer to actually provide us with something more of like physical rather than something which is online and you just follow something. So it's always better if it's provided by the employer.
And I'll just add to that. I think that's certainly what we're seeing as we've brought sort of bounce to the marketplace, is actually having structured programmatic learning in place with this sort of build your own sort of mentorship marketplace, where you have the flexibility to get access to people from a wide variety of organisations, but you need to deliver it in a structured way so that there's outcomes that tie back to what the business is achieving. So we really believe in, you need a little bit of structure around that, particularly if you're deploying something like this in an organisation, because without that, you don't, a lot of people don't have that focus on what they want to achieve out of it and getting the right outcomes. Yep.
Cool. Any more? I think.
Meng's got one.
Meng's got somebody at the back.
Hi, this is a question for Ronish, because I think you're just speaking for a whole generation today, so congratulations. I thought it was really interesting that you said that, your generation is looking for things like support and flexibility, and those are just like tangible outputs like we could implement, as leaders. But what are the outcomes you're looking for? Is it like happiness, not working late nights, like feeling good about yourself, career progression? Like, what is it you think you guys really want? Sorry, big question.
Good question, but I would say most probably as new grads, we would prefer support progression into the industry and just happiness in general, because as new grads, there is a lot of stress going on as well when you have to pay a student loan and everything going on. So career progression definitely helps, yeah.
I should bottle you and try and he's available for hire. I think there's probably lots more questions that could come your way. Justin, did you have a...
I just wanted to make one point. You were talking about work from home and flexibility, and I'm not sure if you guys are following it, the We Fucking Love Startups podcast. You all need to be subscribed to that. John Daniel Trusk, who is the co-founder of Raygun, in that podcast he says if you're not at the office, where you said, if you're working from home, you're not leading. And you're missing out on the water cooler chat, the office banter, the opportunity to network, to be discussing and having those free-form creative conversations that it's much harder to get that if you're working from home and you're not out at events. So it's like anyone who's got, entrepreneurial or trying to grow in their career should be working in the office and getting into town and going to those events. Working from home is not going to help you achieve that. I just thought it was a really
I think this is
insight.
it's a really interesting concept here, because you got a generation with some very strong beliefs about what a workplace should look like and what they need and want from it. But is that actually any different to a generation, our generation? When we came in, did we have strong? I mean, hey, I wanted to start on $100,000, but I didn't get that. And so I think we do need to understand how, because generations are different. What is it about this generation? But I think there's an element from a leader's perspective to help give them perspective on that exact point that Justin's made. So, yeah, you want to work from home 4 days a week. You've probably been doing that at university for the last 4 years. Not going to lectures and doing them at home. But how is that going to compromise what you actually want? Which is a great question about the output, because what output are you wanting? Because maybe what you want there is actually at opposites of what might be the output. So, but it is a balance, because you don't want to go, well, no, you're here 5 days a week because it's better for you. But how we juggle it, I don't know.
And I think organisations are all trying still to grapple with that.
Yeah.
Before I go to you, Emma, you had your hand up, didn't you? Yeah. Yeah. Can I give you my microphone?
I don't like my voice. So it's about the team culture question that I just want to ask. So in terms of our team, what happens if you feel like the team culture is a little bit broken, and how do you try and fix that as a non-senior or non-manager role? And sorry, there's kind of two parts. So that's one part, and then B, what if you have already kind of spoken about it to a senior or a manager, but nothing is being fixed? How can you try to further influence your opinion on that to make a change? I don't know.
Awesome questions. Who's going to take those?
That's you, isn't it?
I was looking at you.
First of all, I'll say it's awesome if you have. I think the first thing would be to have a conversation. But yeah, this is a real tricky one, because how deep is it? Is it just that team? Because for Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, we're an enormous organisation, and yes, we have some defined cultures, but there are also micro cultures. So it could be that maybe the culture you're experiencing, you can have a conversation, you can try and influence, but maybe there's just a nicer, maybe that is a micro culture, and it's not representative of the actual business, and there might be an opportunity elsewhere in the business. So that would probably be from my big cruise ship and all of these big rooms and stuff around there. That's probably my one perspective if you haven't.
And I think if it depends how big how big the problem is as well. It's probably like moving the cruise ship. If it's a very small sort of cultural issue, if you're working with your leaders, and that might be able to be fixed quite widely. But if it's just a large toxic, quite widespread thing, that's not going to be easy to change very quick if it doesn't come sort of from the top down, because a lot of that sort of stuff does have to start at the top down and it filters through the organisation. And it also, when you're hiring new people, you need to ensure that you're hiring for the right sort of values and culture that you want to set when you're bringing new people in. So it's a really hard one, and if it's not something you feel like you can change or influence or work with your leadership team on, it might not be the right culture for you. And that might be another thing as well.
And is it clearly defined that there is a problem? Because maybe that actually is the culture that they want, and you're going, hang on, this is wrong. So I think understanding, but if it is really clearly there's a problem here. One of the things I remember I did when I saw that, hey, F&P is just growing so much, we're losing ourselves, we don't have really clearly defined values. I actually, and people don't really know our purpose, because it was to improve shareholder value. And so I went around and asked people, a bunch of people on camera, hey, what's our purpose? Cool, what are our values? And no one recited anything the same. I compiled a little video and I took it to the CEO and I said, hey, just want to check this out. And he was like, wow, got a problem. So I think it's almost like that A and B thing that was mentioned earlier. You've got to move them to actually, what you want them to see.
Cool. So we're just about out of time for questions, I'm afraid, but I'm going to ask each of you for one action or takeout that you'd like to leave everybody with? So it's your one word of wisdom.
One word.
Who wants to go? You, Sophie, you go first.
I'll go. I'm gonna say accountability, because I think we all say we're gonna do things and we never do it. I'm my own worst enemy on this. So we have to invest in ourselves. And so if we don't invest in ourselves, people are the core of business. So we all have to invest in ourselves and our team. So keep yourself accountable, learn and develop and grow. And I guess you showing up here today is proof of that, but make it continuous. Yeah.
Cool. Ronish, do you want to?
I was going to say responsibility, but it's the same as Sophie.
What do you make? Can you just, what would your kind of expansion on that one word mean?
Similar to Sophie, so just understanding your responsibilities and knowing what you have to do and actually owning up to what's to be done.
To yourself?
Yep.
Yeah, sweet. You're going to pick a different word?
Oh my goodness, I definitely want to hammer home that humility piece, because I just think being open to making mistakes, acknowledging, hey, I made a mistake, or hey, I don't know. But then I'll maybe add to that this whole concept of empathy. I think Sophie mentioned it earlier. But, having empathy, we're not actually all naturally empathetic, but just the key is put yourself in the other person's shoes. So, what is it? What's their context? What are they going through? And I think that's, again, whether you're an individual contributor or a leader. Yeah, have empathy.
Thank you very much. That is a very, very quick run through to a massive topic, as you know. But anyway, I think it's lunchtime now, isn't it? Yeah. Cool. Thanks to our panel.